Good evening and welcome to another edition of The Cycle right here on Vuka Online Radio with me, your host, Mogale Mothale, Monday the 10th of March. And thank you to my colleague Monges Makalima for that news bulletin. He will be coming back at around 7 p.m. to bring you the latest in the news. As I always say, that's what we do. Apart from inspiring you with good music and good conversations, we also make sure that you get the best news. You are well informed. And Monges Makalima does a good job at that. So this evening, before we go to what we are going to talk about this evening, maybe just a recap of what has been happening in the last few days. Last week, we saw the address of the Union by the President of the United States, the mighty Donald Trump, saying that he has just started. If we think that what we have seen is enough, he is just getting started. That's what he said. And remember, last week, that's when all the tariffs were actually started to be effective from last week on the 1st of March. That's when all the tariffs that he's been speaking about started to be effective. And you will remember that the Canadian president, the Prime Minister, Trudeau, saying that they are going to fight back. They are going to fight back all this. And what was even more interesting was the fact that it was almost immediately. It was an immediate response from Canada and some other parts of the world. We are just going to monitor the situation as it unfolds. And saying that one of the funniest moments was when saying that they were giving aid to support LGBTQI plus to a country in Africa that nobody has ever heard of, that is Lesotho. And you're like, really, Mr. President, your Doge minister or someone who is leading the government efficiency is actually has applied. His company Starlink has applied, for a government contract or a license in Lesotho, and you don't know Lesotho. I mean, who doesn't know Lesotho? But anyway, that is just Donald Trump being Donald Trump. Another thing that caught my attention last week was the fact that the Democratic Alliance um, went to the Washington D.C. in the United States, and they are saying that these are their efforts to stabilize the diplomatic relations between South Africa and the United States. They are saying that they have engaged, key decision makers to ensure that the leaders receive accurate and fact-based information about South Africa. And the Minister of International Relations, through his spokesperson, Crispin Perry, saying that there are only two people who can engage the U.S. government, and that is himself, the minister, and the president. And what I think is really wrong about this thing is that it looks like everybody now can really just go to the stage and say that they represent South Africa. It feels like everybody now can really do a diplomatic mission, just to go to the United States, engage the Senate members, engage members of the Congress, engage policymakers, engage everybody. And I think there's a need for that coordinated diplomatic move to really deal with this. Because it can't be that everybody is just going to the United States and trying to speak for all of us, whereas we have an elected government, we have the executive that is tasked with the responsibility of doing this. But Asikola for this evening, maybe we'll talk about that some other time. We are not there this evening. This evening, we will be talking the cabinet reform package. This is what the ActionSA has proposed in Parliament. It's not going to be an easy thing to do. I can tell you that because they will have to convince everybody. They will have to convince even the MK party, the EFF. I don't know how they are going to convince those parties that are in the government of national unity to be part of what they're really trying to do to get this thing passed. Athol Trollip will be joining us this evening to talk to us about this. He is the parliamentary leader of ActionSA, and he's also the chairperson of ActionSA in the Eastern Cape. Remember, he also the former mayor of the Nelson Mandela Bay. So he will be joining us this evening to talk to us about the cabinet reform package, which they are arguing that ministers they serve no constitutional purpose. That's why they must get rid of them. And they are saying that this piece of legislation it's a patriotic piece of legislation because it's something that they don't see any political party opposing to this, because at the end of the day, it will save the government money. It will save, those departments that have been suffering some budget cuts. We know that there were some budget cuts in the education department, in the health, as well as even in the military. So Action SA saying that that will actually help, because if you look at what the ministers, deputy ministers are earning, the properties that they have. I mean, they will have a house in Pretoria and one in Cape Town. They will have, those allowances, travel expenses, the VIP protection services. So you cut those, you are saving billions of rands, which can go into public health, which can go into basic education, which can go into our military services. So that's the conversation that we'll be having with Athol Trollip right after the break. Not right after the break. After the break, we're just going to take a listen to some of what they've been saying in Parliament, and then right after that, he will be joining us on the line to talk to us about this cabinet reform package, or maybe if, and also if we do have some time, we will have him to talk to us about the zero tolerance corruption bill that also they will be tabling. We are going to take a break. When we come back from the break, we will go straight into the first part of the show.
The Africa Center for Work-Based Learning is a professional development center for professionals who aim to improve their professional standing. This means that the learning programs we run are more than just academic programs. They are work-based programs that focus on leveraging your current experience as a professional to build your overall profile. A year down the line, the Africa Center for Work-Based Learning is developing into a preferred center for professional development in Pretoria, with 8 professional development faculties including accounting, teaching, entrepreneurship, as well as IT and many more. For more information, go to acwbl.org or dial +27 12 751 7608. The Africa Center for Work-Based Learning.
Welcome back to the show right here on Vuka Online Radio with me, your host, Mogale Mothale. Somebody reminded me while we were on break that you didn't say anything about how to get in touch with you. How do we get in touch with you right here on Vuka Online Radio? We are at Vuka Online Radio on all our social media platforms. We are at Vuka Online Radio on X, on Facebook. We are also on Instagram, on all social media platforms. You type in Vuka Online Radio, you'll find us there. You'll find us there, and that's where you can follow us and follow the work that we do. This evening, as I said before we took a break, we will be joined by Athol Trollip later on the show, just after the break, where he will be talking to us about the cabinet reform package. So what they are going to do with this, they are going to, table a constitutional amendment to abolish deputy ministers, because they are saying that ministers are serving no constitutional purpose. So they are going to amend Section 91, which deals with roles of cabinet ministers, and also they are going to be repealing Section 93 that talks to specifically deputy ministers of the Constitution. So it's going to be quite interesting to see how this is going to play out in the National Assembly. And they are saying that this amendment bill will actually cut cabinet packs. We'll talk to cabinet packs bill, which will also end up in amending the Remuneration of Public Office Bearers Act of 1998 to drastically reduce excessive ministerial allowances These are housing packs, travel expenses, and VIP protection. I mean, maybe just to simplify it, a minister and a deputy minister will have houses in Pretoria, in the upmarket suburbs in Pretoria, Waterkloof, and then they will also have houses in Cape Town, and they will have protection service here, and they'll have a protection service in Cape Town. They will have those travel expenses and all of those perks that they come with being a minister and a deputy minister. So you can imagine the amount of money that goes into just ministers and their deputy ministers. So the ActionSA is saying that we cannot continue like that. We will have to come up with ways to save, and one of those ways to save is to cut, the cabinet to 20, just 20 members of the cabinet, no deputy ministers, just ministers who are there to do the work, and we don't have these deputy ministers. Let's now take a listen to Athol Trollip, who will be joining us later on the show, talking about this reform package right after they had a media briefing in Parliament last week.
Good day. My name's Athol Trollip. I'm the Parliamentary Caucus Leader of ActionSA. We've just had the most incredible press conference where we've highlighted the fact that we're going to be introducing two pieces of private members' legislation. The one is to Zero Corruption Tolerance Act, and the other one is to cut executive excesses. Now, what's going to be quite unique about this is that it is both of them are patriotic pieces of legislation. They're not parochial. So we're going to try and convince all political parties in Parliament who align themselves with being against corruption and also against a bloated executive. All political parties talk about it, but what we've seen is that it's all talk and no action. So we're going to motivate this by saying that this is actually patriotic legislation that we want to introduce, and the one around corruption is innovative in that we are proposing stricter sanctions. We are expecting the cabinet to lead by example. We're expecting the president to take action, and also around cutting the excesses of cabinet, we're going to move for the abolishment of deputy ministers. Deputy ministers serve no constitutional purpose, and the president can nominate deputy presidents. We believe we shouldn't have any, and we should reduce the size of cabinet. And once cabinet has been proposed by the president, we believe it must come to Parliament to be sanctioned. Just like when you appoint Judicial Service Commissioner members of Parliament, Parliament must sanction that, and we want the same thing to happen with cabinet, that we don't have misfits in our cabinet that are not there to serve the people of South Africa, but rather to serve themselves. We've had enough of that, and we want to see that change.
Well, that was Athol Trollip speaking just after the media briefing that they had, talking about what they are proposing to government, and of course admitting to the fact that they will have to really go and try and lobby other political parties. It's not going to be an easy thing. As I said before we took a break, it's not going to be an easy thing. But like he's saying, they are going to try and bring them on board on this one. Let's take a listen to Darlene James and ActionSA MP talking about the Zero Tolerance Corruption Bill.
To propose strengthening of the PRECA bill. Number one, to broaden the definition of corruption, because we've seen how it's changed. The acts of corruption has been changing like a chameleon. Number two is to strengthen accountability, because too often we all know what is happening in our spaces and we're too quiet, fearing victimization. And that cannot be at whose expense? At the expense of ordinary South Africans suffering in our communities. With that, allow me to read to you the proposed amendments of the PRECA bill. These amendments focus on two areas: broadening the definition of corruption and strengthening accountability. To ensure comprehensive coverage of corrupt activities, ActionSA proposes amendments to expand the definition of corruption, including abuse of political power. Do you know who I am? Do you know who's my party? What can I do for you? Explicitly incorporate abuse of political power for personal or political gain and trading in influence. Price gouging in public procurement. recognize price gouging in public procurement process as a corrupt act. It cannot be that something costs 20 rand a glass
Pay 100.
and you pay 100 rand. So kan het nie aangaan nie. Gross negligence include gross negligence in the exercise of government authority under the ambit of non-reporting of corruptions, because you often hear, when we have, I remember during state capture, there were so many witnesses that came to the front and said, I knew and I felt that something wasn't right, but I didn't speak out. This is why we're saying, make the non-reporting of corruption a criminal offense, extending liability to individuals who ought to have reasonably been aware of corrupt activities but failed to report them. Private sector corruption, it is also rife there. Ensure the definition encompasses private sector corruption, reinforcing the accountability of businesses and corporate entities.
Well, that was Darlene James, the member of the of Parliament for ActionSA, speaking about the zero tolerance corruption bill that they will be tabling in Parliament. So it's going to be very interesting again to see how they are going to get this done. But looking at this, I mean, we have been talking about corruption. Every political party, they are talking about corruption and how we should end corruption. And maybe this is an opportunity for them to say, you know what, we are not going to go into which political party are we representing. We are here to represent the people, and anything that is in the interest of the people, we are going to support that. But we will wait to see how the ActionSA is going to maneuver this one. Let's now listen to Alan Baisley, the Member of Parliament from ActionSA, talking about the reckless spending, including excessive travel expenses, and outlines how their proposed cabinet reform package will actually end this wasteful expenditure.
Cabinet live in luck. They say a fish rots from the head. This is so true in South Africa, where our head body, the cabinet, is clouded in corruption controversies and has no regard for setting an example how to prudently spend government resources. In this regard, I'm looking forward to reintroducing the Cut the Cabinet Perks Bill, which was originally introduced by Minister Schreiber in 2022. The bill, which ActionSA will be introducing, will build on the Remuneration of Public Officers Bearers Amendment Bill, which lapsed on the 21st of May when the 6th Parliament was dissolved. I'm very grateful to Minister Schreiber for the hard work that went into the bill, but I'm certainly not surprised that the DA have let the bill lapse and have become silent on the subject. When the bill was introduced, the DA raised the need to reduce the luxury lifestyle of rockstar ministers and deputy ministers, and raised the concern that South Africans are struggling to put food on the table whilst ANC cadres and cabinet live in luxury. As ActionSA, we could not agree more with these sentiments, but now the ANC cadres include ministers and deputy ministers from parties across the GNU. In a country that is racked with poverty, unemployment and inequality, and with more than 50% of households going to bed hungry tonight, it is morally incomprehensible that the 75 members of cabinet live a life of opulence. This opulence includes personal and administration staff, VIP drivers and protectors, official motor vehicles, international travel, official and state-owned residences. When the bill was being introduced, the DA estimated what each of the above was costing taxpayers a year. What is so interesting is that the cost for international travel was estimated at 20 million a year. In terms of the 21 responses received so far to written questions posed by ActionSA, indicates a whopping 143 million in travel expenses between July and December 2024. Extrapolated across the full cabinet, this could amount to 215 million in 6 months, or 430 million annually, with most of these costs being overseas travel. Since the GNU, travel has gone from 20 million to 430 million. Talk about a runaway train. No wonder the DA and others in the GNU are quiet. As ActionSA, we will not be quiet and believe it is imperative that there is greater transparency, oversight and cost control over the perks of office for the President, deputy president, ministers, and deputy ministers.
Well, that was Alan Baisley, the ActionSA member of Parliament, talking about the amount of money that goes into travel for overseas trips, that goes into sustaining the lifestyle of ministers and deputy ministers. Like I said, the houses, the cars, and all these things. I mean, that is just something that I think we need to start looking at. I think the former chancellor of Germany, that lady, I was told that actually she lives in the same apartment that she lived in before she could become a chancellor. She actually does her own grocery. She drives herself. Manining, I think I saw a picture of a minister of transport in Sweden who was actually taking a train to and from work every day. Really, it was not a stand for that particular day, but it is said that that's what they do on a daily basis. We are going to take a break. When we come back, Athol Trollip will be joining me on the line. Stay tuned.
Life or personal coach you're about to work with is who they say they are. How do you know if they can do the job? At the Africa Board for Coaching, Consulting and Coaching Psychology, we can tell you. So, before you share your secrets and spend your money, check with us first. Visit www.abccccp.com or call us on 012-751-7608. The ABCCP, the professional body for coaches.
Welcome back to The Cycle this evening with me, your host, Mogale Mothale. This evening, just as I said before we took a break, we are now joined by Athol Trollip, who is the ActionSA parliamentary leader and the Eastern Cape chairperson, who is going to be talking to us about what they will be tabling or what they are proposing to Parliament, which is to cut the cabinet size, the cabinet reform package. And he's going to be talking to us about this in detail as to how they're going to do this, as well as what are they hoping to achieve out of this. Mr. Trollip, good evening and welcome to Vuka.
Good evening. Thanks very much for having me on your show.
Thank you so much. You and me and most of South Africans will agree that reducing the size of a cabinet can be a strategic move to, enhance efficiency in government, to cut the cost, as is one of the things that you are saying in your proposal there, and also to a certain extent to streamline decision making. And maybe before we go into the details of how you're going to do this, maybe just to talk to us about what is the rationale behind this proposal.
Well, first of all, as you're aware, 2 weeks ago, the Minister of Finance was not able to table his budget because they can't balance the budget and the GNU partners don't agree on increasing VAT. We also don't agree. We believe that we should be cutting the fat and leaving VAT alone. And the best way to cut the fat is to reduce the size of our cabinet. It's one of the biggest cabinets in the world. And we have 32 ministers and 43 deputy ministers. There's no constitutional provision for deputy ministers other than the fact that Section 93 says the president may appoint deputy ministers. Now, we believe that we shouldn't have any deputy ministers. There are countries with bigger populations, with bigger GDPs than ours, that have cabinets of 20 people, no more. And if we did that, we would be able to save at least 1.5 billion rand every year. But the biggest thing about that won't balance the budget, but it'll send a signal to taxpayers and the residents of South Africa that government is serious about cutting waste. And that's what we want to achieve with this proposed legislation.
And one might say, actually, maybe why don't you go for an option of perhaps after assessing the current cabinet and maybe having identified maybe redundant ministers or overlapping ministries, why are you not talking about restructuring ministries, like merging ministries with similar portfolios, or maybe go to an extent where you are suggesting that perhaps you can abolish those non-essential ministers? Why are you not opting for an option of restructuring ministries as opposed to perhaps completely obliterate the deputy ministers altogether?
Well, first of all, that's precisely what we're doing. We're saying we don't believe there should be any more than 20 ministries, which means that you have to right-size the ministries and make sure that they are effective. And then, as far as deputy ministers are concerned, they have no executive authority. They're not part of cabinet. So they're completely superfluous, and they just cost us too much money with all the perks that goes with them. So we believe we could right-size our government quite easily into 20 departments. In fact, we've seen the departments and the cabinet grow over the last 30 years, and it hasn't improved governance at all or service delivery. In fact, it's made it worse. Our economy is not growing. We've got the highest unemployment rate ever, highest crime rates, highest corruption rates. So the current cabinet's not working. It needs to be right-sized, and that's what this legislation looks at, and also cutting the cost of government.
Mm-hmm. And we both know that for you to be able to get that through Parliament, you will need to lobby other political parties to support you in that call. And at this moment, under the government of national unity, you have the Democratic Alliance and many other political parties. And at one point, Democratic Alliance, which you are a former member to, was opposed to this bloated cabinet. But now, because they are in the executive, they are not saying anything about it. How are you going to lobby other political parties to say, we cannot have this, we need your vote on this, even if you are actually part of the cabinet?
Well, that's very well said. And it's amazing how some parties were opposed to a bloated cabinet, but now that they're part of the bloated cabinet, they support it. So it's going to be difficult to get parties to support us. It's going to be very difficult. But we believe that it's going to be difficult for those parties not to support us, because the other piece of legislation that we're proposing is zero tolerance of corruption legislation. Now, if parties don't support us on either this reducing cabinet size or zero tolerance for corruption, it will mean that they embrace it. So it's going to be a tough time, but we're here in Parliament to do our work. We're an opposition party, and we're going to do the best we can. And it's going to be a rough ride, but we believe that it's worth it.
And of course, it's something that most of South Africans would like to see. But like you said, it's going to be a difficult one to really get all the political parties to support you. And I really hope that you are able to get those. You are not only, proposing the cabinet reform package, you are also talking about the zero tolerance corruption bill that you will also be tabling. Could you please tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, look, this will have to be my last one because I've
Yes.
got to run. The other one is zero tolerance for corruption. We believe that there should be minimum sentencing if found guilty of corruption, 15 years for any corruption exceeding 500,000 rand. And we say that because there are ministers in this cabinet right now that have been implicated and even had judgments against them for corruption, yet nothing gets done about them. And clearly, Cyril Ramaphosa is not too concerned about corruption and members in his cabinet that are corrupt. So we believe in South Africa we need to put our foot down and say we will not tolerate corruption. So it's going to be interesting to see how the parties vote on that legislation.
No, thank you so much, Athol, for your time this evening. I hope that you make time again, maybe in the coming weeks, so that we are able to talk at length about those two pieces of legislation.
Anytime. I'd be happy to talk to you at length. I just need to collect something at Home Affairs now, and there's a long queue here.
No, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
You're welcome. Well, that was Athol Trollip, the parliamentary leader of ActionSA, and also the Eastern Cape chairperson of the ActionSA. Remember, he also, as a former mayor of the Nelson Mandela Bay Metro, talking to us about the cabinet reform package that they are proposing to Parliament, admitting that it's not going to be an easy thing to do. I mean, you have how many parties in the GNU that are, part of the cabinet now. You have all those political parties that are there, and it's going to be difficult for him to start talking to political parties that are in the GNU, because for him to actually get the proper numbers, the right numbers, he will have to convince some members in the DA and members in the ANC, and also in the ActionSA and other political parties, the IFP, the UDM, and everybody else, because I don't see them, I don't see them making it only with the EFF and other small parties like the MK. I mean, MK is quite a big number. They can actually say, you know what, we can work together in doing this. But still, you will still need a bigger chunk, like your Democratic Alliance, to support you in that call. So it's not going to be an easy thing. And he also spoke about the zero tolerance corruption. Zero tolerance on corruption bill that they are also tabling in Parliament. This is where they are proposing a minimum sentencing of 15 years for those who are found to be guilty of corruption without any option of fine or certain option of a fine or a parole. So those are some of the things that they are proposing, because they feel that until somebody does something, we are still going to see corruption, going on and on and on without anyone stopping it. So they are making some serious proposals there with regard to mandatory minimum sentences. They are also talking about the fact that they must hold individuals and corruption accountable through mandatory repayment of corruptly acquired funds and additional punitive penalties. So those are some of the proposals that they are putting forward for this bill to be adopted by Parliament and ultimately be signed by the President. But saying that the President is also compromised because of the Pala issue and other cases that we know that the President at one point faced, more especially with the allegations that there was monies that were paid improperly to his campaign before he running for the ANC presidency. So those are some of the issues that he's saying that to get the ANC to support us on this is going to be difficult. They've got the majority in Parliament, and we just have to make sure that we lobby and convince other political parties to support us on this one. So we are going to take a break. Actually, we did, ask Athol Trollip to stay with us a little bit longer. We requested 15 minutes with him, but unfortunately, there's an emergency, as we have heard him there saying that he has to rush home because there's an alarm that went off. So we are going to take a break. When we come back, we are continuing with the cycle right here on Vuka Online Radio. Stay tuned.
The Africa Center for Work-Based Learning is a professional development center for professionals who aim to improve their professional standing. This means that the learning programs we run are more than just academic programs. They are work-based programs that focus on leveraging your current experience as a professional to build your overall profile. A year down the line, the Africa Center for Work-Based Learning is developing into a preferred center for professional development in Pretoria, with 8 professional development faculties including accounting, teaching, entrepreneurship, as well as IT and many more. For more information, go to acwbl.org or dial +27 12 751 7608. The Africa Center for Work-Based Learning, where work is learning.
Welcome back to the show. This is the cycle, the show that comes to you every Monday from 6 until 7 p.m. Right here on Vuka Online Radio with me, your host, Mogale Mothale. Thank you so much again for streaming. Thank you so much for supporting us. Thank you so much for following us and follow the work that we do. We really appreciate you. We really appreciate you so much. We just had a conversation with Athol Trollip. Unfortunately, we couldn't continue as we planned on the conversation. I requested 15 minutes with him on this one, and unfortunately something happened at around 2 minutes past 2 minutes past what? I can't even remember what time was when I tried to get hold of him. And that's when he said, you know what, I'm just dealing with something that just happened at home. Please bear with me. And then when we started the conversation, that's when he said, you know what, I can't go all the way to the 15 minutes that we agreed about. But anyway, we appreciate him for the time that he has made for us this evening, talking about the cabinet reform package, which is something that, as I said, something that most South Africans really, putting party politics aside right now, most South Africans, they feel that our cabinet is too big, let alone the age of the MPs and the ministers, just the size, So it's something that the public will actually welcome, but it's something that the parliament must vote on, and you need enough numbers to get that passed so that the president can sign it. So it's going to be a difficult one for them. I mean, they will have to have a conversation with the Mkondo Sizwe party. They will have to work with EFF. But what I know is that the EFF and ActionSA, they are not hostile towards each other. I mean, they worked together in the city of Johannesburg. They are working together now in the city of Tshwane. I don't think the meeting will be hostile. I'm not sure about MK, how they are going to get through to that, but they will have to really talk to them, and also convince some members of the Democratic Alliance and other political parties to say, support us on this, so that we are able to get this passed, so that we can reduce the size of our cabinet, because it's too big and it's costing us a whole lot of money. We cannot continue like this. Of course, you also spoke briefly about their zero tolerance corruption bill that will be tabling, to say that we need to deal with this corruption issue, because it looks like it becomes a slogan, it becomes a popular verse. We sing it all the time, but nothing is really done. Even when the SIU have made some advances, you then realize that the NPA is not ready. The matter has been withdrawn, and it really doesn't give a good picture about the NPA and our law enforcement agencies, because you really have to start building that confidence from the public, to say we have the NPA that is working, we have the NPA that is competent, they are able to take on the matter, and their convictions for, as people will use the word, big fishes. People have always said that it looks like the target is only the small fishes, so we need to get into the big fishes to see how we can really eliminate and deal with corruption completely. I want us to take a listen to Herman Mashaba speaking about this zero tolerance corruption bill in Parliament.
Importantly, I'm most proud that the introduction of our proposed trigger amendment by our team, which is perfectly in line with ActionSA's long-standing fight against corruption. We had what Relin said earlier on. During my tenure as executive mayor of the city of Johannesburg, our own fight against corruption led to the city uncovering 35 billion rands in 3 years, 35 billion rands of corruption, wasted through corruption, and more than 6,000 cases of corruption being investigated by the relevant authorities. And what is actually even more painful and hurtful is that there's not really been any serious consequences to those involved. No serious consequences. 35 billion rands, we're not talking small monies. 35 billion we covered in just 3 years. And some of the cases, fellow South Africans, to share with you, they were as clear as daylight. clear as daylight. I want to just give you an example so that you illustrate the veracity of what I'm talking about. When I was the mayor, I discovered that the city of Johannesburg gave away the most valuable piece of property to a Vuka company. You know where the center counting station is? I call that site the crime scene because it is a crime scene. The city of Johannesburg gave that property, the prime piece of the real estate in South Africa, to a Vuka firm, the company, for nothing. They said you'll pay us 370 the day when you develop the site. I gave them the title deed in advance. When I discovered this, when I was the mayor, discovered that this Gupta-linked company went to the market, came up with plans for redevelopment of the mixed-use development, went out to raise 420 million rand to investors. Instead of actually building and give the city that 270 million rand, they ran away with the 420 million. Up to today, there's no consequences about it. When I checked this, I went to delay criminal charges myself to the Johannesburg police station. Up to today, the NPA tells us they don't have enough evidence to prosecute. Tell me, do you understand why I would be a drunkard or I'll be in a mental institution? The NPA says they don't have enough evidence to prosecute. So this is just really one of many of examples. Like some of these cases was as clear as today.
Well, Herman Mashaba there is speaking about his experience while he was the mayor of the city of Johannesburg and some of the corruption that he uncovered in that city. And his frustrations with the fact that the NPA was not able to prosecute because they did not have enough evidence. Who is supposed to be gathering evidence? Because, you know, in as much as sometimes I think we can blame the NPA because the NPA relies on the investigators, the SIU, the South African Police Services to gather information, to gather, evidence, proper evidence, so that when they go to court, they don't embarrass themselves there. They don't embarrass themselves when they get to court and they get there. It's a frivolous case and it's just thrown out of court. It's really disappointing. So there must be that a proper coordination between these entities, the NPA, the law enforcement agencies, in how they conduct and collect evidence, so that when NPA goes to court, they have a proper evidence and they are able, what do they call it, prima facie evidence. They are able to have convictions and they restore public trust in the NPA. I can tell you now, the public trust on the NPA, on the South African Police Service, you know, it's low. It's a harsh truth. It's low, but I think we can still do something to really improve that trust in the law enforcement agencies and all of that. So so that we can really be a nation that has a full trust on our police, on our courts, and of course even in our government leaders. We are going to leave it here for the cycle this evening. We will be back next week, Monday, from 6 until 7 p.m. right here on Vuka Online Radio. From me, it's a good evening until we meet again next week. God bless you.
How do you know the life of personal coach you're about to work with is who they say they are? How do you know if they can do the job? At the Africa Board for Coaching, Consulting and Coaching Psychology, we can tell you. So, before you share your secrets and spend your money, check with us first. Visit www.abccccp.com or call us on 012-751-7608. The ABCCP, the professional body for coaches.